Welcome to Worcestershire's Most Haunted. We're going to start our journey at the Fleece Inn, a pub in Bretforton. It's steeped in history. It was built in the 15th century by a farmer as an early type of farmhouse. When it became a pub, it stayed in the ownership of the same family until 1977, when Lola Taplin bequeathed the pub to the National Trust. Its architecture has remained largely unchanged since the 17th century. Due to its location, it's said that the Lancasterians marched past it on their way to the final defeat in the Wars of the Roses at the Battle of Tewkesbury in 1471. And in 1605 the gunpowder plotters rode past on their ill-fated attempt to blow up Parliament. The pub has witch circles on the floor in front of the fireplace. It was a medieval tradition of chalking lines on the floor to prevent witches getting through the chimney. The marks were drawn every night, so much so there were indentations on the floor. But despite all that history, there's said to be a more recent spirit who lives at the pub. Its last private owner, Lola Taplin. She was a direct descendant of the man who built the inn and lived there all her 77 years. Folklore has it that she watches over the pub and its people. She was said to have been a formidable woman, telling people they should be honoured to be drinking in her home. She insisted the pub was for alcoholic beverages only and not food. After her death, the rules were relaxed slightly, and rumour has it that Lola shows her objection by knocking over plates of food just as customers were about to eat them. Other people have reported hearing strange footsteps around the building when no one is about. Ragged Stone Hill is another of the places that you'll want to stop at on your tour of haunted places in Worcestershire. The Twin Peaks are said to be haunted by the spirit of a former friar from Little Malvern Priory. The friar is said to have confessed his sins because he felt tortured by his own carnal desires. But despite the cleric being guilty of similar thoughts, or perhaps because of it, he condemned the friar to serve his penance by crawling on his hands and knees up the rough side of Ragged Stone Hill every single day. In time, the friar became angered by the severity of his punishment and is said to have climbed to the peak, where he hurled a curse upon the church and anyone who had the misfortune to have the shadow of the peaks fall upon them. On uttering the curse, he apparently dropped dead. Since that day, many of those who walked in the shadow of the hill has fallen victim to the curse, including the Duke of Clarence, Richard III, the Princes in the Tower, Henry VI, Cardinal Wolsey and Anne Boleyn, all of whom met a tragic end soon after visiting Ragged Stone Hill. To this day, there are scattered reports of an apparition seen crawling up the hill. Drakelow Tunnels were a former secret underground military base built underneath Kingsford Country Park at the start of the 1940s. They were decommissioned at the end of the Cold War in 1993. During the tunnel's construction, several accidents happened, resulting in the death of 7 people. There have been a number of ghost hunts in the pitch-black tunnels, with reports of sudden mists, wartime music being heard, security dogs seemingly fixated and barking at nothing, and sudden cold snaps. In 2016, a paranormal investigator claimed to have filmed a ghost after venturing into the tunnels alone. One tour company warns people to prepare to be touched, breathed on, and pushed. All of these which have happened to guests previously. Worcester Guild Hall. The beautiful building dates back to the 18th century. Today it's just a visitor attraction, hired for meetings and weddings, but it was once the seat of justice for the city. In fact, it had subterranean cells for prisoners awaiting the death sentence or deportation. The building was constructed on the site of an earlier building thought to have been a meeting place for merchants in the 13th century. Ghostly figures have been spotted haunting the rooms, moaning and screaming, and have been heard in the cells walking around. There's a reputation of a strong smell of perfume that lingers in the air. Visitors talk of a sudden drop in temperature and seeing the ghost of a young boy crying in the cells. Records show, once upon a time, there was a young boy here who hanged himself. The Commandery. The 800-year-old building in Worcester is famous for being the headquarters of the Royalists in the Civil War. But tradition has it that the building was founded as a hospital in the 11th century by Sir Wulfstan, the Bishop of Worcester. However, the hospital was built around a much earlier Saxon chapel. It's been used as a chapel, almshouse, home, and a place of respite for weary travellers, amongst other things. But on to ghosts. The Duke of Hamilton, who lived here for a time, was seriously injured during the Battle of Worcester. He was carried back to the Commandery with blood pouring from his leg. He later died and was buried under the floor of the building before being exhumed and reburied in Worcester Cathedral. It's said that the Duke's spirit haunts the solar room, the living quarters of the Master. Visitors have felt a strange presence there. One man arrived early for a meeting and left with some haste, not able to explain what he had experienced, but vowing never to go back. Lots of ghost hunts have been held at the site, where there have been reports of a crying woman, a ghostly monk, and the sounds of swords clashing. Harvington Hall is an impressive red brick Elizabethan property with tall chimneys. Most of the rooms are still filled with the original paintings and furnishings, and the house is what is possibly the best collection of priest holes of any home in the country. The owners of Harvington Hall won't admit that the property is haunted, but anyone who has visited will tell you that the property is bursting with the energy of those that have gone before. However, the grounds are a totally different story. They are said to be haunted by a Mistress Hicks, who was basically accused of being a witch. She was hanged at the crossroads near Harvington Hall, with a belief that the formation of the cross would contain her spirit. But no such luck. Mistress Hick is frequently spotted roaming around the grounds of Harvington Hall. Worcester Cathedral. The Worcester Cathedral that you see today actually dates back to 1084. But prior to that, there was actually a priory on the same site, which is believed to have been built in 680. The cathedral overlooks the River Severn and is best known for its Norman crypt, chapter house and central tower. The library is also well known, dating back to Saxon times. It houses an impressive collection of medieval manuscripts and post-medieval books. It is also one of the most haunted places in Worcestershire. Witnesses have reported seeing the apparition of a spectral bear in the cathedral. Terrified visitors say that the apparition appears and then rears up on its hind legs as though preparing to attack. However, luckily for the witnesses, it then disappears just as it looks ready to strike. Another apparition that has been seen here is that of a ghostly hooded monk. He is said to appear as a misty figure in photographs taken by the many visitors of the cathedral.